Ministry of Culture. While we are congratulatory to him for his new position, we're sad to see him leave MNRE, but it is great to know that he continues in the government to have the kind of impact that he's had throughout the lives of Indians, South Asians, and people all over the world. So we welcome Anand Kumar. We are equally grateful to have with us this evening Dinesh Jagdale, who is Joint Secretary at MNRE, who's relatively new to the ministry, but in fact has already made his mark and already identified amongst his colleagues and us, the stakeholders in this work, already identified himself as somebody who is going to carry this torch and really make a difference in the work that we do. I won't go through in detail everybody's CVs, but I'll let them talk a little bit about themselves when they all speak. But Ms. Vaishali Sinha is with us today. She is, of course, the chairperson of SAWI and the founding chair at Renew Foundation. We're very proud of SAWI, the South Asia Women in Energy Forum, and we are extremely excited at its launch, but also more importantly at the numbers and types of people who have already realized its importance and its place in this discussion and have jumped on board. We had a webinar the other night of SAWI members, and it was awe-inspiring to see the folks who were participating and really interested and very much wanting to see this move forward. So we're excited to have Vaishali with us this evening, and you'll hear from her in just a few minutes. We also have Mr. Amit John. Those of you who've been in India for a while and worked in this area of cook stoves, clean cooking across South Asia and India, you know Amit. He's been a champion of this work. He's an energy specialist at the World Bank, of course. Ajayta Shah is the founder and CEO of Frontier Markets. You'll hear from her a little bit later as well on the panel. And of course, Azna Tawfiq, who's the manager at Clean Cooking Alliance. Ms. Tawfiq joins us from Canada. And so it gives us credibility when we say this is really a global gathering and we're bringing perspectives from all over the planet. I hear that Ms. Tawfiq originates from my home country of Bangladesh. I spent several years in Bangladesh working on clean cooking stoves and a number of other things having to do with energy and natural resource management. So it is with profound sense of happiness that we welcome Ms. Tawfiq from the cold country to the north to join us this evening, and we thank her in advance. So I'd like to just set a couple ground rules real quick for the entire evening. There's a lot of people online. We know that everybody's going to have a opportunity to contribute, or at least most people will. Very important, and I'm sure these are one of the things we're learning as we're learning more about these webinars and the online conferencing and so on as a result of the global phenomenon we're all living together. And that is, please keep your audio off when you're not speaking and just listening to others. It's probably also better to keep your video off because it allows for the broadband to focus in on the few people that are being filmed and who are highlighting in their discussions. And when it's your turn to speak or ask questions, please turn your video on so we can see you and turn your audio on, of course, so we can hear you. But if you keep those things turned off, you can listen and you won't interfere with the broadband and allows us to try and hear everybody clearly. Thank you for your attention to that. The other last little house rule I'll talk about is we're going to try to go through this quickly. Another lesson learned from doing these webinars is that people don't have the attention span that they may have sitting down in a conference that they've traveled to. They're now sitting in their house. And so there's more anxiety about getting off quickly, getting the information being done, and either getting on to the next meeting or spending time with family, or even in the evenings preparing to, of course, get some sleep. So prepare for everybody to kind of move along quickly, and we'll get through this evening, and a lot of good information will be exchanged. Let me first introduce Vaishali Ningam Sinha. She's the chairperson of SAWI and also the chair at Renew Foundation. She, of course, brings with her an incredible amount of experience and background. She has been working in this area for quite a while. She's a practitioner of sustainability and gender empowerment for over a decade. She's currently serving, as I mentioned, as the chief a CSR, Sustainability Communications Officer at Renew Power, which is India's leading renewable energy independent power producer. And she's deeply engaged with the industry bodies, think tanks, and educational institutions by being a member of the Governing Council of the UN Global Compact Network India, GCNI. And also I'd mention a chairperson of the Gender Committee. I could go on, but in the name of trying to keep our presentation short this evening, let me just say that it is an incredible honor to have Ms. Sinha with us this evening, and I'll turn it over to her for her comments.
Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. I'm not sure if I deserve it, but appreciate it. Dear members of SAVI, Mr. Anand Kumarji, and other panelists and audience present on this webinar. It's an absolute pleasure to be with all of you on this webinar. You know, SAVI has always has been on the vanguard of supporting women's rights and accentuating the cause of gender equality, especially in the energy sector. And I think this is a much required platform which is being created. So congratulations to all involved, and I'm delighted to be chairing it. You know, the mission of SAVI is to bring together women leaders across the energy sector to work together, various stakeholders to come together to design interventions, outreach, to recruit, mentor, lead women in the energy sector, and also above all, help bridge gender gaps which exist and move towards a more gender neutral workplace and an ecosystem which is more gender neutral. It's really great that we've got such wonderful people together today on this webinar. You know, World Bank is hosting this discussion on women in energy, best practices in clean cooking across South Asia, an extremely important topic. And I'm going to be listening very carefully because it's an area I'm very interested in, and we do some work around entrepreneurship, and we want to see how we can also apply this to clean cooking. So I'm going to be listening carefully. You know, as all of us know, India has played a very important role in the development of SDGs. The SDG 7 ensures access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. One of the 3 indicators of SDG 7 is to ensure usage of clean cooking fuel to 100% households by 2030. However, the India SDG dashboard doesn't read too well. It indicates that only 44% of households use clean cooking fuel, and nearly 60% of the population depend on polluting, inefficient stoves to cook food. Now, that's not good news at all. And, you know, cooking this way exposes people who are cooking, who are mostly women, to pollution, risk of health issues and diseases, which are pulmonary, chronic, heart-related, cancerous in nature. And so in India alone, if we were to look at the statistics, nearly 500,000 deaths occur each year due to all of these factors, primarily driven by cooking and heating. Women and girls are often at the center of all of this and are disproportionately affected. And so it is absolutely incumbent to work on this area and come up with solutions. Of course, this doesn't change when women are pregnant, and it impacts them even more because it impacts the infant as well. You know, also about 400,000 children under 5 years die each year from household pollution. And so the statistics are quite alarming. Keeping the risks involved due to polluting cooking fuels, it is imperative that we make a switch to cleaner fuels, absolutely a no-brainer. The use of cleaner, more modern stoves, etc., can reduce a lot of the toxic smoke and also a lot of the risk which kind of impact the health of various people who are using these. Clean cooking can help reduce forest degradation, of course, on the climate front, and also cut down on the time that families, usually again women and girls, who spend on cooking, collecting wood, etc., and trading it with things like refreshing activities for women and schoolwork for young girls. So all in all, I think it's a very important area for women and will impact women if we do make the switch. It is worth mentioning, however, that over the past 5 years, India has seen unprecedented progress in scaling up clean cooking, including connecting over 60 million households to LPG under the Prime Minister's Pradhan Mantri Ujjwal Yojana. So some amount of work is being done, but a lot more still needs to be done. I have been closely monitoring the work World Bank is doing around Clean Cooking Initiative in Bangladesh, and the numbers they have achieved in terms of distributing clean cooking stoves are quite impressive. I'm glad that we have representatives here, Amit. I'm going to be listening very carefully about what you're doing, your programs, and your experience. So thank you, and I look forward to this discussion.
Thank
Yeah,
you
over to you.
very much. Your comments are both profound and timely. Of course, it goes without saying that in some ways, it's ironic that what we have chosen to do in many instances is pollute the health of those who nourish and nurture us at the closest moments in our life, family, children, the intimacy of our home. I know that a lot of this isn't by choice necessarily, but it certainly is at a place now where we need to make a choice to move away from that. And so, Vaishali, thank you very much for your comments and your insights and your experience. It is a profound thing that we are dealing with here, even though it very often seems like a fairly minor part of life. I want to go now to our keynote speaker this evening. We, as I mentioned earlier, very honored to have with us tonight a good friend, and more than that, a champion of the issues that we're discussing, the impact of energy and the use of varieties of different types of combustible energies on the public health, specifically on the women in our lives and in our world, half of our population on the planet. I have known him now for a few years, and I am honored to call him both a colleague, a mentor, and a friend. And we are incredibly grateful for his presence tonight. And we also want to congratulate him on his new position as the new Secretary of the Ministry of Culture here in India. We will certainly miss him in MNRE, but we know that his influence and his critical thinking will permeate throughout government and throughout society and throughout private sector, because we know where his heart is. It is a pleasure, of course, to introduce to all of you who may not know him, although I have a feeling he's known by almost everybody, Anand Kumar, who is, of course, a career member of the IAS and presently the Secretary of Ministry as a Secretary of the Ministry of Culture, as I mentioned. But prior to this, he served as the Secretary of the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. He's held many important positions in national highways, infrastructure development, corporation, tourism, industry, biotechnology, finance. I could go on and on. He holds a master's of philosophy and degree with distinction from the University of Delhi, with a variety of honors from the University of Queensland, Australia. I probably don't need to introduce to many of you, but I hope you'll all join me in welcoming Secretary Anand Kumar. Mr. Kumar?
Thank you very much, Michael, for the elaborate introduction. I'm humbled by the words you have put in for me, and very good morning and good afternoon and evening to our guests from all over the globe. All right. My very dear friend, Mr. Michael Sutton, Director, USAID, dear friend again, Naughty Tharot, Senior VP, Youth ISF, Adam Vaishali Nigam, Chairperson of SWAVI, distinguished panelists, other stakeholders, guests this evening. I would like to express my heartfelt condolences to those who lost their loved ones, my families, best of health. I would like to congratulate USAID, World Bank, Savi, US India, and USISPF for organizing this very important webinar at the time when we are having the difficulty in sustaining economy through this webinar on women and energy and focusing on clean cooking. When I moved out of tourism, people said that once you are a tourism man, you're always a tourism man. When I entered into the road sector, people said that, you know, when you are an infrastructure man, you're always an infrastructure man. When I moved into RE Energy, people said, once you are in RE Energy, never leave RE Energy. And now I've gone back to tourism and culture. But what I wanted to say at this point of time that RE Energy is the future, and the future to which we all belong and to which we all should contribute in the interest of future generation. And the present position which I'm holding in the Ministry of Culture is about propagating the right values. The values which are important today for our society and values which are important for our future generations. Friends, women have always played a significant role in building both global and individual countries' economies. Renewable energy is a sector that directly benefits from the participation of women as opinion maker and awareness generator at home, apart from being a part of the RE technical and business ecosystem. At home, they can create awareness among children and others about segregation of waste, ending use of single-use plastic, rationalization in use of resources, conservation, need for adoption of RE, and most importantly, reducing the carbon footprint. Mother is the first teacher for a child. And that's how the role of women becomes all the more important for development and deployment and advancement of renewable energy. Today, though, I would have spoken regarding the clean cooking, but I thought that I should speak regarding RE sector and RE power and the role of women they can play in advancement of RE sector. They, by opinion makers and influencers, can catalyze adoption of RE by households and communities. 1 minute. As a change enabler, the renewable energy sector contributes directly to the benefit of economy, environment, and to the global UN Sustainable Development Goals. Mrs. Sinha rightly pointed out. Gender perspective and influence in renewable energy sector is an imperative that explores the role of women in adopting and encouraging sustainable methods of living, business, creating employment opportunities for women in renewable energy sector, and also to understand the challenges faced by them in this sector due to lack of sponsorship, unconscious bias, etc. Traditionally, power sector globally and in India has been viewed to be a domain of male workforce. However, with a focus on equal opportunity and access, women in India are increasingly participating in the sector as engineers, analysts, developers, service providers, and managers in awareness generation and marketing. This transition is happening despite the societal challenges and disparities like imbalanced division of labor, lower incomes, lesser livelihood opportunities, lesser access and control over land and other productive assets, fewer legal rights, lesser mobility, lesser political and professional representation, and lack of support to scale up women workforce in the energy sector. Today, the women can play better and more active role in energy sector, particularly renewable energy sector. Today, women can engage themselves to shape up the clean energy value chain in unparalleled and increasingly recognized way that can be showcased by the global community and fully acknowledged by various governments. Decentralized renewable energy solutions are being scaled up to complement the grid extension efforts in rural areas, while providing opportunities for thousands of women. It is evident that adopting a gender perspective to renewable energy development at this juncture is critically important to ensure that women's contributions, their skills, and views represent an integral part of the flourishing and growing clean energy economy. The development and deployment of female human capital can be key to deployment of and RE's global growth. It is pertinent that the impact of present global COVID-19 pandemic is impacting livelihood of both men and women. However, based on the assessment of the social structures of our society, it can be deduced that the impact of livelihood of women will be significantly more. Across the world, women represent less than 40% of total employment, but make up 57% of those working on a part-time basis, according to the International Labour Organization. As the effects of COVID-19 pandemic would roll through economies, reducing employment opportunities, triggering layoffs, the temporary workers, majority of whom are women, are expected to bear the brunt of job losses the most. So the most affected due to COVID-19 pandemic would be women. In many developing countries, large number of women are either self-employed or work as contributing family worker without any clear terms of employment. Moreover, service sectors such as food, hospitality, and tourism are female dominated, which are expected to face the harshest down effects during the post-COVID-19 pandemic. Cheap and reliable energy access at such times become more important than ever before, as also the need to find appropriate solutions to the unique issues faced by women. Renewable energy is one of those sectors which is likely to have limited exposure due to the pandemic. Since renewable energy has the potential to be distributed, off-grid, and sustainable, it is possible to continue to create jobs through this sector in far and remote areas. The size and scale and potential of renewable energy growth can provide both employment opportunities to women as well as address community concerns. In India, we have always recognized, celebrated, and motivated women's involvement in India's successful renewable energy movement. And in this time of crisis, we would like to continue solving issues and discussing the way forward for enhancing their role and contribution to RE sector. We would like women to be successful entrepreneurs, technology and service providers, beside being agents for creating awareness and positive change for reducing carbon footprint of our global economy. Coming to today's topic, clean cooking, RE cooking, addresses the concerns of women's health, conservation of forests, and making us less dependent on fossil fuels like gas. Our Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi ji, has always asked us to promote solar cooking. It is not the clean fuel cooking. It is the green cooking. And he always said that we must promote and we must advance the technology so that we do not depend on the non-fossil fuel, on the fossil fuel, and may it be clean fossil fuel. If you see gas, there are a large number of countries which import gas, and the gas is then imported from the port to the cities, and the cities to the homes, and how much diesel or petrol we waste on transporting this. And then there is a tragedy in taking the gas cylinders and pipe. If we have solar cooking, then it's distributed. People cook through the induction. So towards this direction, we initiated solar by providing solar induction cooking. And in this, And till date, we have provided solar induction cooking to around 200 families in India, 100 families in Andaman and Nicobar Islands, and another 100 families in Bittur. And this pilot project have been successful. In this solar cooking, we provide a panel of around 800 kilowatt, 800 to 1,000 kilowatt for capturing the solar energy. And then we have a small storage system and induction cooking stove. And if you have the, basically you're producing energy and we are helping the women to cook. And this has resulted in better health of women. This has resulted that women are no longer going to the forest to collect woods, and they are no longer looking for the gas subsidy. So ultimately, we all have to move towards the RE cooking, the solar cooking. And I have no doubt in my mind that as the technology would advance and as the prices of solar panels fall, as the prices of the solar or the storage battery would come down, the solar cooking would be in thing. And this would definitely help our women who are working, who are living in the remote and far areas. So friends, with these words, I would like to end my my small little address here, and I would like to wish a greater role for women in RE sector and in making the economies of individual nations and the globe. So thank you very much for inviting me and making part of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Secretary Kumar. A pleasure to have you, and some very coveted comments that we will certainly take to heart. I'd like to move on to a very special featured presentation this evening. Amit John, the Senior Energy Specialist at the World Bank, promised us an opportunity to really understand in a more intimate way how the bank is working in this area and the conditions that populations find themselves in a presentation he calls Understanding the Success of the Largest ICS Program Globally in Bangladesh. With that, let me introduce Amit John, the Senior Energy Specialist at the World Bank. Amit?
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much. I would like to share my screen first.
Amit, if you could speak a little bit louder or speak closer to the microphone, it would be a little better. We hear you better. Thank you.
Yes. Is it better now?
Yeah, that's a bit better.
Okay. I would like to share my screen to show the presentation, but it's not giving me the option. Siddharth, if that's not happening, can you put the my presentation on?
Yes, Amit, I'm pulling it up. Just give me a second.
Okay, I can start till then. Thank you, Michael. Michael, if you have noted, interestingly, if you look at Ms. Vishali, Anand Kumarji, even yourself, we all have been working on solar energy and clean cooking at the same time. And I get asked this question a lot of times when solar energy, for example, in India has reached 37 gigawatts at 4 cents under the leadership of Anand Kumarji. Why we haven't seen such a success in clean cooking, in several parts of the world, including India? So I usually give them this answer that when you talk about solar, we install solar at two places. First, either we install solar in deserts like Rajasthan, and we have solar parks, or we install solar at our roofs as solar rooftops. But both of them are very impersonal in nature. They don't intrude in my personal space. So solar becomes a success story. In case of clean cooking, Michael, you have to go inside the house, replace the existing cook stoves which women are using, convince them, win their trust, and then replace that cook stoves with a modern cook stove. So cook stove story is not about financing, not about policy. It's also about winning trust of the women who have the complete control over cooking at the household. So that's why clean cooking is much more challenging what solar is. And that's why we say trust is the most important factor when we talk about a success of clean cooking program. And this presentation focuses on how in Bangladesh, the World Bank EDCOL program has won the trust of 2 million women in Bangladesh, and at the same time promoting gender mainstreaming. In the next slide, you will see a few numbers on where do we stand in terms of um, clean cooking in Bangladesh. Now, let's first try to identify the problem. Bangladesh is a large country with a population of almost 135 million people. Even till today, 82% of the population is still using polluting and using wood and leaves, biomass for their clean cooking. Bangladesh is a little bit different from other countries in the world. It has a population density of more than 1,000 kilometer, 1,000 per square kilometer, and it also have a integral MFI and a microfinance network within Bangladesh, which is missing from the other countries. What I'm trying to say is because of the population density and the existing network, it's relatively easy to kickstart a program like Solar Home System or Clean Cooking because for a company, it's easy to sell a solar home system or clean cooking in a relatively small area. So high density in Bangladesh really helped in promoting clean cooking. If you look at as Ms. Vishali mentioned, in terms of the deaths, we are looking at almost 113,000 deaths in Bangladesh every year as a result of indoor population. Yes, we are all counting deaths, what COVID is happening all across the world. Unfortunately, deaths by indoor population does not get much attention. There are significant impacts on climate change as well. In Bangladesh, 10% of the climate change emissions come from cooking itself. The main reason behind that is the gender disparity we have not only in Bangladesh but also in South Asia. As you can imagine, the economic participation and the income level are much lower than the male population in Bangladesh, again, which is very similar to what we have in the South Asian countries. So it is very important to first identify the problem and then look at the solution. Now, when we started this program in Bangladesh, uh, there were very few people who were using new cook stoves. But right now, the World Bank EDCOL program is probably one of the largest program in Bangladesh. The business model is as follows. We have partnered with EDCOL, which is one of the largest financial intermediaries in Bangladesh, and they have connections to what we call in India as NGOs or partner organizations like Gramin Shakti, like Rahima Farooz. These are the NGOs which have presence on the ground. So it's a bottoms-up approach where microfinance institutions online the financing from EDCOL to sell cook stoves. The important lesson over here is rather than creating a new network, it's very important to piggyback on an existing network to start a new program. For example, Gramin Shakti and Rahima Farooz were already existing in Bangladesh before EDCOL introduced Solo Home System or Clean Cooking Program. We just piggyback on an existing successful structure and then rolled out the Clean Cooking Program. The second lesson from Bangladesh is there should be no subsidy in selling a cook stove. For example, in Bangladesh, when an IDCOL officer sells a cook stove, it always sells above the manufacturing price. There is no subsidy on the selling price. Whatever grant or subsidy World Bank or GCF is providing, it is for the market support and for awareness activities. Because we truly believe that subsidy-driven programs usually don't reach a scale-up and does not give success. And the result we can see as of now, as I mentioned, as of today, 2 million women have installed improved cook stoves in Bangladesh, and we are targeting 5 million cook stoves by the end of this program. This program has mobilized or will be mobilizing $82 million, which is probably one of the largest, which has several partners, including World Bank, IDCOL, and Green Climate Fund. Now, when we started this program, we knew, Michael, that World Bank is not an expert in clean cooking. So we need to partner with an agency which has experience globally on clean cooking. That's why we partnered with the Clean Cooking Alliance, which has presence in many countries, and they knew how to scale the clean cooking program. So we designed this program with IDCOL along with Clean Cooking Alliance, not only for scaling up, but also in terms of the gender framework. So Clean Cooking Alliance follows 5 pillars in gender framework. We followed all of them step by step. The first pillar is gathering of data and evidence. So as I mentioned, it is very important to know how much time a woman will save if an improved cook stove is installed, how much time a children will save to study more if ICES is installed. So this data collection was very important before we launched this program. Similarly, how much impact on the pollution, indoor pollution in terms of carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, and black carbon will be impacted as a result of clean cooking. Then we also need to see that what kind of awareness activities will be important. As I mentioned, clean cooking is more about a behavioral change rather than doing a financing. So we did a massive awareness campaign focused on gender, where women empowerment was done so that they can make a decision on how to improve clean cooking at the household level. And now you'll be hearing more from Ajaita and from Asna later on, but it is very important to have the enterprises, local entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs who can lead its initiative. Let's briefly talk about the pillar number 1. How did we did it? Now, one of the main challenges in implementing a clean cooking program is you install a clean cooking stove. After a couple of years, there is no maintenance or the clean cooking go down. But in case of IDCOL, a 25% inspection was done on the clean cooking, so that to make sure every clean cooking works over there. Then in the data collection, we also reached out to various entrepreneurs on the ground so that they understand what are the impacts of clean cooking over there. There are 3 questions, Michael, which are usually asked during a clean cooking program. First is, how clean are your cook stoves? Are you sure the cook stoves which you're installing are going to reduce the indoor air pollution? Secondly, what are the impacts are going to be of clean cook stoves on climate change? And finally, how do you test a clean cooking in your own country? These were the 3 important questions we were facing while installing the clean cooking in Bangladesh, and we try to answer all of them. For example, we are partnering with APROVICH, which is an international agency which will help install a state-of-the-art ISO lab in Bangladesh. Till now, the clean cook stoves from Bangladesh are being sent to Nepal, which is expensive and it takes time. But very soon we'll have a lab, an ISO-approved lab in Bangladesh, which will reduce the time of testing by 1/3. Then we are also conducting a greenhouse gas study, which will exactly measure how many tons of carbon dioxide will be saved as a result of this. In this study, we are focusing on interclimate, looking at monsoon, winter, and summer, the variation in these climate zones. We're also looking at intra-regional differences within Bangladesh. So we are going into really lot of details to quantify the fact what is the savings we are going to have from the clean cooking solution. Then there is the second pillar where a special focus has been on the building capacity of the enterprises. So when we partnered with IDCOL, it was important for us to introduce business models which are gender informed. And if you look at the results, 25% of companies hired by IDCOL are led by female, 26% of the female staff all across the program, including IDCOL and NGOs, and the target is to reach 40% at the end of this program. I must tell you over here, as Ms. Vaishali mentioned, these are the decision makers. These are leading the NGOs. These are not working at a lower level. These are technical and the decision makers in these companies which are working with IDCOL. Then IDCOL has instituted an annual award for best partner organization, where the award is focused on gender inclusiveness and what kind of policies these companies are employing. Several training programs have been done in this. I happen to attend one of these programs, Michael, where a meditation program was being done by IDCOL to increase the decision-making power of the woman. The whole meditation program was not focused on clean cooking. It was focused on what kind of behavioral change can be done in the woman so that they can take decision-making power in their life, not only limited to clean cooking, but also implementing that in their life. Now, once you have an enterprise, we move to pillar 3, where these enterprises should get finance. The finance should be concessional without subsidy. That is where the World Bank IDCOL played a major role. IDCOL introduced preferential loan products. Now, usually when IDCOL gives a loan to a company, it gives a 6%. But in case of female-led NGOs and companies, it was much lower than 6%. Several criteria were lowered or flexible when it comes to female-led enterprises. For example, down payment, EMIs, or the qualifying criteria. They were relaxed to improve the women participation in leading these companies. And affordability of this clean cooking was a major criteria. IDCOL did a very interesting thing where they encouraged the local entrepreneurs to manufacture locally rather than imported material. Today, all the cook stoves in this program are manufactured locally. None of them is imported internally. And this was done by engaging women. And if you look at the results, over 6.8 for women are now the beneficiaries of this program. Now, as we know that women are untapped resources in the supply chain. So IDCOL really paid attention where they employed women in training, in promoting, in selling, in the complete value chain of this clean cooking program. Now, when we move to pillar 4, it was very important the awareness should be done. You'll be very interested to know that when we did awareness, the awareness was not done only for women, it was also done for men, because men became an integral part of this decision-making progress, where they allowed the women to choose their cook stoves and also interact with the women entrepreneurs who were selling these cook stoves. So the meditation program was also done for men to understand, to help them understand what impact it's going to have on the time being saved by women on cooking and the impact it will have to save time for children for learning. You can very well see how many film shows and courtyard meetings were being done by IDCOL, and they are going to hire now an international firm for spreading this awareness all across Bangladesh. Then let's move to the last pillar, which is the most important pillar. All the 4 pillars will be of no use if we don't influence the policy making in the country. And Mr. Anand Kumar, as rightly mentioned in his speech, the policy at the central level of the government is very important to drive this process. So in pillar 5, we again partnered with Clean Cooking Alliance, where a national action plan has been launched in Bangladesh. Bangladesh is probably one of the first few countries which has announced National Action Plan for Clean Cooking. It aims to install 100% clean cooking by 2030, which means almost 30 million units. As Ms. Vishali mentioned, the World Bank program is just a start. Right now, we have done 2 million. Even if we do 5 million at the end of 5 million, Vishali, we are still very much short of 30 million target. So there's still a long way to go. And the National Action Plan, which was launched with the help of Clean Cooking Alliance, focuses on gender rights, which increases women participation in the clean cooking sector. We also did a very interesting thing in the policy making where we were able to mobilize $20 million from Green Climate Fund, which you all must know it is one of the largest funders now globally on the climate change. The Bangladesh program is the first program which was able to mobilize any kind of fund from Green Climate Fund, GCF. It has become now a landmark for GCF because based on this funding, they are opening new funds for clean cooking in Africa. Several projects from GIZ and World Bank are now applying to GCF after the World Bank financing. And when we got this program, we created a gender action plan and a gender framework as a prerequisite for GCF, and that became a reference even for GCF when it moved forward. So these were the 5 important pillars which attributed to the success of the Bangladesh Clean Cooking Program. But this we did not do on our own. As I mentioned, we worked very closely with Clean Cooking Alliance, Government of Bangladesh, IDCOL, and now with SAWI. Here, I would like to mention that the World Bank has a We Power initiative. In this initiative, which is a joint initiative from the World Bank and ADB, which is a bottoms-up approach, which we actually applied in Bangladesh, where the companies and the women entrepreneurs from the ground learns, manufactures, and does the awareness. And then it takes this clean cooking to the medium level of IDCOL and finally to the World Bank. So the We Power initiative has been now up and running for more than 1 year. And we aim to share this success story of Bangladesh clean cooking through the We Power initiative and the SAWI initiative in other countries as well. Thank you very much.
Amit, thank you very, very much. Brilliant presentation on some very important information, and we're grateful for your time and sharing your insights and your experience. We are now moving to another part of our evening, and we hope everybody's interested and excited in staying with us. The best is yet to come, but we are going to move rather quickly because we note that the time is passing faster than we wanted to. And as I mentioned earlier, one of these lessons learned about doing these things on conferences that you have to keep people's attention. So let's move right into our next section, which is a panel discussion on the Indian perspective, progress and potential for replication. We're excited to have our panelists this evening. Let me introduce them rather quickly. Dinesh Jagdale, who is the Joint Secretary at MNRE. We're glad to have you. Thank you very much. You've heard from the chairperson of SAWI and the founding chair at Renew Foundation, Vaishali Sinha. Thank you for joining us on the panel tonight. Ajita Shah, who's the founder and CEO at Frontier Markets, will be joining us, as will, of course, Amit John, you just heard from the World Bank, and Asna Taufik, the manager at Clean Cooking Alliance, joining us from Canada. So with that in mind, allow us to quickly sort of get started. And I am going to do this in a very kind of perfunctory manner, if you don't mind. If you do have questions along the way for any one of the participants, and we won't be able to take all of your questions, unfortunately, but we'll get to as many as we can. I'm going to do more of a question and answer with the panel members. So I'll start right in with Joint Secretary Jagdale from MNRE. MNRE is already...
Point.
Sorry?
Anand Kumarji, are you trying to say something?
Yes. Thank you, Vaishali. I just wanted to say that, when you were talking about clean cooking, I totally agree that And thank you, Amit, for an excellent presentation on the clean cooking stoves. And if we all recall, in India, we used to use energy efficient improved cook stoves. And there's a lot of research which has gone on in India and also in the Lawrence Berkeley lab, which Michael would agree with me. And then we, from the improved efficient cooking stove, we moved on to a very major program on the 1st May 2016 under the leadership of our Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, which is regarding Ujjwala, for providing gas to around 50 million households at a total budgetary support of US dollar 1.1 billion. And later on in 2018, the Ujjwala Clean Cooking Program expanded to around 18 million people. So we moved on from the energy efficiently cooked stoves to the clean cooking through the gas. And now what we are trying to say is, let's not stop at clean cooking. Now move forward from clean cooking to the green cooking. And I have no doubt in my mind that with the prices of solar panels coming down and the prices of storage batteries coming down, it would be possible for us to provide a green cooking solution in remote and far areas where we can harness solar energy. In places we do not have solar energy, we definitely have a handicap, and then we have to go for the other methods of clean cooking. Then I saw somewhere that somebody was raising a question that how much does it cost? So at a point where we provide around 800 kilowatt hour panel and around kilowatt panel and with around 3 kilowatt hour battery, and along with the one induction stove. So this costs something around 50 to 60,000 rupees. But as the scale would go up, the solutions will become cheaper and it will become affordable. And what Amit said, there'll be one day definitely where we will have green cooking without any subsidy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Secretary Kumar. I did want to make a couple comments very, very quickly, and you'll forgive me if I passed over a couple important points. USAID has been working in this area for a long time in a lot of places around the world, including here in India and South Asia, Bangladesh, where I previously lived and worked. I'll be the moderator for today's webinar focusing on cook stoves and improving health and quality of life, especially for women. And while we're discussing today, I did want to make sure that everybody knows that while AID is very firmly committed to accessible, to reliable, and clean energy, and we understand it's key to improving health, as the Secretary just mentioned, it also strengthens livelihoods and bolsters local economies. The energy is especially critical to improving health, safety, productivity, education, and income generation activities for women and girls, and young boys who are disproportionately impacted by the lack of access. We are working to increase access for all people and strengthening opportunities. What I did want to just make sure that I would be remiss in not mentioning is simply that the work we're doing today is, of course, focused on the South Asia Women in Energy, or SAWE platform, that is meant to promote gender equity in the energy sector. But it is also USAID collaborating with one of our great partners, the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, the USISPF. And we're grateful for their continued partnership and the incredible work they're doing on this and so many other aspects of the work we're all championing. So with that, let me go back into our panel and ask our esteemed guest, Joint Secretary Jagdale. I have a question for you, sir, if you don't mind. MNRE, we know, is already implementing various programs, including the Unnat Chulha Abhiyan, or Better Cook Stoves program, and the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana, excuse my Hindi, to provide alternate cooking solutions to help reduce dependence on traditional biomass cooking. Based on the government's experience, can you share with us what you think are some of the major bottlenecks in the value chain and possible solutions to overcome them? Because we all know that rural communities and semi-urban communities are looking for these avenues of access, but they're not always there in the free and open marketplace. And sir, if I may, with all due respect, ask you to keep your comments relatively brief. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin, and sir, good evening to all. And sir, good evening. I was fortunate to start my career with Sir Secretary Sir, and or since 23rd March, since that lockdown began, I was not able to meet him. So, sir, seeing after a long time, sir. Good evening, and good evening to all the panelists here. Hope everybody is staying safe. We are going through a very deep crisis, and with all the homage to those lost their lives, and with due praise for the safety of all the people. My comments here, as Sir said, that MNRE has evolved from the learnings and the experience that our programs have given to us. We started with Unnat Chula, we had biogas, and we still continue to do that. And post, when I joined ministry and under the guidance of the Secretary Sir, I was able to review a document which talked about the effectiveness of the Unnat Chula Abhiyan. And based on that, and when I read the document, there were certain shortcomings that actually revealed about how a successful program should be. And basically, Amit, today when he went through the success story of Bangladesh, it is immensely important that all the pillars that he talked about are critical in the Indian scenario as well. What I want to say is that basically the needs and the aspirations of the user. What is really important is, are we able to meet her or his need, and whether a clean cooking element and a stove is able to meet the aspirations of that woman. And being such a divergent country with every 200 kilometers you go, the need, the habit, the cooking style, the food, the timing, that changes every 200 kilometers you travel from north, south, east, west. It is very important that you really design an element, design a stove that actually serves the requirement of the family there. And when you look at this, there are certain challenges which actually we threw across the industry. That how can a solar cooking be able to meet these standards? Can I really use the solar cooking stove to meet the aspirations of how can I make a roti? How can I cook my dal? And that's where the element of stacking of fuels comes in. And when I talk of stacking of fuels, there is place for every technology. Gas, LPG is important. Green cooking will have its own element. And when I say that, we also need to have the integrated clean cooking system, and that will help the entire element to then be self-sufficient, be smokeless, be pollutionless. And when we talk, my entire family that gets help out of this program will be more effective. And these are my remarks on how we are going to do it. I had a stakeholder consultation with few of you members. I think Terry is here and some of the other members are here. They had made detailed studies about how the program should be run. I did make a certain, I did consult with them. We are studying that element and have to bring out a good program about this. Cost is a challenge, which I think over a period of time will come down, but it is more important that how do you really meet the end user's aspirations. That's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jagdale. Appreciate your comments. I'd like to move on very quickly, if I may, to another esteemed member of our panel and ask Ms. Ajaita Shah, the founder and CEO of Frontier Markets. Ajaita, what do you think are the key challenges and solutions for improved clean cooking energy access for the rural households, those who are often marginalized, who don't have access to energy of any kind very often? How are the opportunities for women entrepreneurs? How can they be strengthened in this area specifically? So the solutions to the clean energy problem, not an easy answer, but the opportunities for women entrepreneurs because they're a part of the supply chain. Ajaita?
Michael, there seems to be some technical problem with Ajaita. I think she's trying to log in back. In the meanwhile, we can.
Okay. All right. Well, when we get her back, we'll get back to her. Meanwhile, let me then just go quickly to another member of our panel. We are grateful to have Miss Asna Taufik, the manager at Clean Cooking Alliance. And Asna, if I can sort of start off incorporating the previous question, but elaborating a little more. Given your rich experience in clean cook stoves, what kind of an ecosystem do you envision to enhance the adoption of clean cook stoves? What kind of partnership alliances are needed to step up the implementation in the South Asia region? And I'd have to say that while we know that wood burning and dung burning cook stoves have an impact on the environment, we also know they're fairly simple for most people living in rural communities. They've adopted these habits over many generations of collecting these pieces in their environment. So how are they going to deal with this sort of change in behavior? I think that's always the biggest problem. You can put the supply chains in place, but it's a person level behavior change that's what's required. So it's about envision to enhance the adoption of clean stoves, what kind of partnerships are important, and what kind of behavior change. Asna?
Yeah, thank you so much, Michael. I mean, as the previous panelists also mentioned, I mean, every country is different, right? And there is no one solution that fits all. I think that has been one of the challenges in the sector from the very beginning. And really to build a strong ecosystem, we have to first understand the resource gaps and the needs for every country, right? Like Amit shared, the Bangladesh program is heavily dependent or focused on improved biomass cook stoves only. Where you look into India, as Secretary Sir mentioned, there's a huge LPG program, PMUY. In Nepal, if we're seeing that the government is increasingly focusing on electric cooking, then, you know, in Nepal, we also see biogas used very, very popularly. In some of the African countries, they're trying out ethanol and methanol. So I think time and again, we're always asked, like, you know, which is the best solution, you know? And I think there is no one right answer to that question, and it really depends on what the consumer wants. It's just about, I always give this example, like, you know, in terms of any kind of technology, be it a mobile phone, the consumer gets to choose like which brand, which technology they use. Why not for cooking? In your question for behavioral change, I think you know, cooking is something that is strongly ingrained with culture, and you really cannot change it overnight, you know. I can give an example, I think very silly example from my own, maybe, that growing up in Dhaka and in Bangladesh, I always saw my grandparents cooking with mud stoves and biomass every time we went to their village. In our house, we used to get piped natural gas. And when I got married, my in-laws' place, we used to use LPG for cooking. And now that I moved to Canada, I use electricity for cooking. And I can tell you that this transition has never been easy for me. And I can also say that the food doesn't taste the same. And even so, when we're going and talking to the rural people, I can, you know, I have been to rural households in South Asia, in India, in Bangladesh, in Nepal extensively when I was based in Bangladesh. And I know that, you know, women are, you know, cooking is something very personal, and they don't like, you know, in most cases, like I also don't want someone to come into my kitchen and say like, oh, your stove is not good, you know, why are you using this stove to cook? It is something of pride. Cooking is something of pride, something of, you know, values that, you know, you really need extensive behavioral approaches to really explain and bring that change in women. And from the Alliance, we have been doing some behavioral change campaigns. We did some in Bangladesh, in Nepal, even in India. And in all of those, I think starting from which technology to promote, you know, in none of the campaigns we promoted only one technology. It was always a combination, giving, you know, taking in mind stove stacking, keeping in mind the different technologies that the governments are promoting in countries. And then really building a campaign on, you know, what people really want to hear. What their aspirations are. And depending, really based on a lot of research that we did. The campaign in Bangladesh, for instance, had the tagline that times have changed, change your kitchen. The India campaign had the tagline, smoke is disappearing, progress is appearing. So really trying to link your life changes to cooking, and not really making it something shameful, right? You have to take pride in how you cook and what you cook. In terms of ecosystem building, I think I'll just quickly answer that it's very important that we work very closely with governments, with donor organizations. The partnership that we have in Bangladesh with World Bank is an example that we would definitely like to, kind of replicate in other countries, like with USAID, with DFID, with others. And also like have that faith and that kind of relationship with local implementing partners like ITCOL in Bangladesh. In India, we have worked with partners like SEVA. We have had our grants with even Frontier Markets. And recently, every year we have this award for the Women Entrepreneur Year Award. And this year we are very proud that Neha from Greenway India actually won that award. Just to summarize and end, I think it's very important that all stakeholders, private sector, government, donors, we all work together, because this is not really an easy thing to solve. The reason why solar and renewable energy have made so much progress over the years, but clean cooking is still lagging behind. Secondly, I think the role of local alliances and local organizations is extremely crucial. And platforms like Sawi, I think, can really, really make a difference in bringing together various stakeholders and exchanging knowledge and really promoting women in the sector. An issue that affects women heavily needs to be led by women. And also, lastly, I think the situation that we are all in today, COVID-19, there are studies that already show the relationship between air pollution and COVID-19 fatalities. And indoor air pollution is not an exception. And we really need to ensure that energy access, including clean cooking, is included in the response and recovery stage. With all the lockdowns, people losing jobs, there's likely to be shortages and affordability issues. And, we need to work with governments to ensure that during this time and the time coming in future, we do not lose the attention from clean cooking. Thanks, Michael.
Asna, thank you. I would be on your team any day. I have great appreciation for the fact how you tied it together in a number of ways. It is certainly the evolving literature demonstrating that these elements are so comprehensive and intermingled. The access to energy, the clean cooking energy, and of course, things that are permeating our society today, like quality of our air, and then the airborne diseases, in fact, like the current crisis we're facing, all have a comprehensive agenda and all have a comprehensive solution. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront. Let me now turn to, if I may, the founder and CEO at Frontier Markets, Ajita Shah, who was able to get back to us, conquered the technologies. Ajita, thank you. Here's the question I have for you. There are key challenges and solutions for improved clean cooking energy access for rural households, and how opportunities for women entrepreneurs can be strengthened in the area. What are your sort of main foci in these areas? And tell us something about the experience of Frontier Markets and how you've sort of put together a strategy to meet these challenges and develop these solutions to improve the clean cooking energy access for these rural households. Over to you, Ajita. Great,
thanks so much, Michael. And good evening to everyone. And thanks for being patient with my technology crisis, but I am back. So quick context, of course, is that my personal experience with the clean cooking space and energy access is now running 15 years in India. I started working with energy and microfinance back in the day in like 2006 and 2007, when we were first trying to figure out partnership models of trying to bring in clean cooking solutions to rural women and urban women leveraging microfinance loans. Then set up Frontier Markets in 2011, where I felt that what the ecosystem needed were more access companies, or a market-driven, customer-centric approach to really driving solutions by listening to rural households as the dignified customers that they are. What we learned very straightforward was that rural women specifically wanted everything in the same level as an urban woman would want. They want multiple options for cooking. They want quality products. They want value for money. They want local delivery, and they want to make sure that there's after-sale service that's available. And I think, when we take a step back, whether it's energy access, looking at solar, whether it's looking at biomass, whether it's looking at any sort of energy intervention, the psyche of the rural customer, albeit India or anywhere else, is not really different. Everybody wants best quality, best pricing, local convenience, and after-sale service. And I think the challenge ultimately was always trying to find a good sustainable solution, which would essentially give you the best product that was perfectly customized and designed to meet the needs of the customer at the right price point, and then also delivered effectively at scale to create a market opportunity. At Frontier Markets, we worked for many years with all different types of clean cooking manufacturers. And as Asana, you mentioned, thanks to the Clean Cook Stoves Alliance, Tata Trust, I see Smita on the line as well. We all work together to try to do a very similar combined model that Amit, you mentioned, has been happening in Bangladesh, where we partnered with local NGOs and actually the best infrastructure for rural women, the Self-Help Group Networks of India. I think the National Rural Livelihood Mission's efforts for linking women in the way that they have with such strength in India is really one of the best infrastructures we have. Leveraging that network, working with local NGOs, we looked at an opportunity to, one, truly hear from rural women's perspective of what their challenges are when it comes to clean cooking, what their product needs were, but then also created income opportunities for women to essentially drive adoption of clean cooking solutions in their villages. It was called the Solar Saheli program back then, but of course now it's called the Saral Jeevan Saheli program, because it is about easy life, and it is not just about solar, but it's about everything and anything in between. Our learnings were many. So I think first and foremost, I think this idea of introducing one clean cooking solution to solve all cooking challenges is not realistic. Having been through the Ujjwala program, having been through the Unnat Chula program, having been through when even BP Urja first launched their pellet cook stoves, and all of the initiatives few and far between, the challenge has always been that we assumed that one product was going to solve everything for the women's needs. The reality is that even in my kitchen today and anybody else's kitchen, you have multiple tools for cooking. You have a microwave, you have a heater, you have a stove, you have a gas stove, you have multiple things that you're using for cooking, and women are no different in rural areas. The other major issue is, of course, time. At the end of the day, rural women are becoming more and more busy by the minute because they are getting involved in income generating opportunities. They are getting involved in agriculture. They are absolutely getting involved in empowerment movements thanks to the efforts that we're playing in India, especially. But what that means is that they're still having to cook and still having to take on all their other household responsibilities, only now faster, which means that when they're making 15 chapatis for the people that are coming back from the field at home for work, they have to do it 10 times faster. So we cannot bring in a solution that essentially makes them cook 6 times slower, right? And at the end of the day, we also have to recognize that India being a vast country, we have all different kinds of food staple cooking requirements that are different, right? In South India, it'll be chawal. In North India, it'll be bajra ki roti, right? And we have to understand all the different elements that are then required to be incorporated into the design of what we're creating. Lastly, I'll say that, I think the challenge has also been around capital and cost of production. So ultimately, there have been great manufacturers that have been trying to bring in solutions for clean cook stoves in India, but rural women ultimately want the options, and fundamentally they want it at cheap. So when we're introducing loans for products that are essentially consumption products, they're not going to earn money off of this product that they're using. How are they paying off their loan, right? And so on a fundamental level, when we start thinking about all the connects and disconnects of where we're trying to solve the solution, my conclusion for everyone would be, can we design better, keeping the rural women in mind as a dignified customer who deserves quality, options, and brand equity? Secondly, can we do it with an economies of scale perspective so that we are reducing the price point of the product, knowing that there's millions of people, if not billions of people, that will adopt the solution if it's correct? And third, can we think of a way that actually incorporates a little bit more of our industry perspective of how we start looking at market-based approach? So really, who I have not heard us talk about today is where are all the manufacturers, the market companies, the industries that could actually be as instrumental in making this happen at scale, the same way we did this in solar in India. And I think that there's an opportunity there. Of course, recognizing that for women, if you can create that as a package, then they're ready to adopt. And linking that on a customer lens would be the most effective way to make that happen. Those were our lessons learned. And so today, when we've introduced cook stoves, we're introducing induction stoves, we're in pressure cookers, biomass, every single possible kind of stove solution, because we're letting our women decide what makes the most sense for them. And we're trying to create at the best price point and ensuring that after sales service is there so it lasts longer. And then women earn money by selling it on their behalf.
Ajaita, thank you very, very much for excellent observations. I'm particularly moved by your comments about a comprehensive approach and about an integrated sort of way of addressing this, and not leaving out any particular pieces of communities and individuals and households. I think those are pieces that we often either forget about or they get sort of buried in the sand. We are, as you all know, running a little bit late. At the same time, everybody is sticking with us, and we are grateful for that. This is a robust and very interesting discussion by some very talented folks who I think deserve our ear and who we can learn from. We are going to move on quickly to one more member of our panel. I am going to beg the tolerance of others, including Mr. John from the World Bank, who gave an excellent presentation. But I'm going to ask just one more panel member a question, and then we'll move into some comments from the audience and some closing comments. Vaishali, your participation now, your leadership in Sawe is of interest to me. And as I mentioned earlier, we're very proud of this and our alliance with the USISPF in working on this. But now that you're there and you're actually taking a leadership role and you're working through this along with your work in Renew, it sounds like you have 2 or maybe even 3 full-time jobs. What role do you envision for a platform such as Sawe and large renewable energy companies such as Renew to support the adoption of clean cooking energy in India? Is there a nexus for this NGO or non-governmental organization like Sawe and a private sector that has different motives for operation to work together, or are these separate entities that will work individually and hope to fill needs in the same space? Over to you, Vaishali.
No, thanks. That's a great question, and the answer is yes, absolutely. There is an abundance of ways in which we can work together. Sawe's aim is to promote women's empowerment and gender sensitization in the energy space in South Asia. Right? This objective is intended to be achieved by following a working group model linked to tangible outcomes format. And one of the working groups that we aim to establish is focused around entrepreneurship, which is women's entrepreneurship. And in that context, clean cooking energy promises a plethora of opportunities for women entrepreneurs, especially in economies like India, Bangladesh, and overall the South Asian region, where over 66% of people reside in rural India. And, as I mentioned, a majority of them, 60% precisely, still rely on traditional use of polluting cooking fuel, which causes health issues, especially in women, and often also death. So it's quite a serious issue which needs attention. And as a leading renewable energy company, it is incumbent on us as leaders and innovators to take up this cause and work in this space to sponsor, mentor, and show the way in whichever way we can. And I'm happy to share with this group of esteemed panelists you have who are doing some brilliant work. And it was really lovely listening to how these dynamic women, and of course Amit, you too, you're doing very impactful work. And at Renew, we are doing our bit as well. And so we run a program called Rewin, which is an entrepreneurship program for women till now. It was in rural India, but we're also looking at some accelerator program for entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs in the space of energy. And so, Savi is an amazing platform where, we are working with so many different organizations and individuals and thought leaders, where we can come together and work together to broaden the impact and the scale of such programs. Right now, we're doing it at a kind of a smaller scale, so we'll be happy to scale it up by partnering with relevant people. Just for the knowledge of various people who are on this webinar, we have Renew generates 1% of India's electricity generation capacity by using clean energy sources. So that's pretty substantial. And we are basically penetrating pan-India to help citizens get access to cleaner sources of energy, and also making them aware of the importance of clean energy and clean appliances, clean fuels, etc., amongst other forms of advocacy. This is something which we're also doing. So with renewable energy companies, at the forefront of the clean energy revolution, which is taking place in India, which is unprecedented, and we're very proud to be a part of that journey. I'm hoping that Indians will be motivated to adopt cleaner sources of energy in their homes, and some very interesting points on ownership of how women feel about cooking and the soft issues are so important. And sometimes we don't look at these, but yeah, how you cook your food, whether it has a tandoor flavor or whether it has a different flavor, is really very deeply entrenched in the minds of these customers who we work with. So it's important to consider all of these things. And I do believe it's extremely important, very critical. It's going to improve health of women, provide a better future, free up their time to do other things. Right now they go and kind of gather, as I said earlier, sort of sources for cooking, which take up a lot of time. With all of the electric and the other clean cooking options, that's not going to be the case. So extremely valuable area to work on. These discussions are invaluable, where we get to know about what's being done, how it's being done, and how we can all come together and collaborate, come up with policy recommendations. It's really nice to have very senior members from the government present here as well. A brilliant platform to do more and do good, and do it by scaling whatever we want to do. So absolutely an opportunity to collaborate, and Savi's critical connect. Yeah.
Vaishali, thank you very much. Great comments, and we appreciate you being a part of this today. You're an important player here, as we all recognize, and leading this effort. As you all know, our clock has struck 8:30 p.m. here in Delhi. We are about a half hour over time of the expected time. It means that, of course, we've had a very robust and fulfilling gathering and conversation. The plan is that the questions that have been posed in the chat, and if you haven't got your questions in there just yet, please feel free to kind of quickly type them in, and we will record those. We plan to go back through them and then use them to incorporate into a white paper that's being developed by SAWE on this very subject. And your questions will be the impetus for addressing many of the issues that are important to this community of stakeholders and thought leaders. And so we encourage you to share those questions with us quickly before we wrap up tonight. And also look for that white paper when it comes out in the next month or so. And that'll give you a chance to kind of be debriefed on this gathering, but also to see your questions answered. With that, I would like to look for a final wrap up. We'll take a couple more minutes. There are people that have stayed with us all evening, and I want to make sure they get a chance to make some final comments on this. The general theme, of course, being the feasibility of the cook stove, efficient and energy efficient cook stove revolution that we're all hoping for and know is required here in India, the pathways to get there, both the market pathways and the government pathways, as well as what the role of private sector is, and the organizations that we've created, whether they're governmental, non-governmental, or the platform that we brought to you tonight, SAWE, the South Asia Women's Energy Initiative. And we'd like to have you sort of speak to that for those of you who are going to make some final comments. So with that, if I may, we have on our panel one last person who hasn't had a chance to talk yet, but I'm going to ask him to be very, 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 very brief in his comments. Amit John from the World Bank quickly, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Dinesh Jagdale at MNRE, and if nobody else minds, I certainly would like to call on Secretary Kumar before we close up, and then we'll wrap it up from there. If that's feasible, Mr. John, please, your final comments on those elements of our discussion.
Thank Michael. Couple of things which we will share from Bangladesh. As I said, it is the private sector who can drive this resolution. No amount from subsidy from Bangladesh or from Government of India can drive this clean cooking revolution. So we have to make sure entrepreneurs like Frontier Networks and the local entrepreneurs from India who kickstart this revolution. And finally, local manufacturing is very important to clean cooking. Unlike solar, which you can import from outside, clean cooking is less than $10 for Bangladesh. So you cannot import items like clean cook stove for outside. You have to import locally, which generate jobs, especially for women. So these are the two things which are important we need to do in India and to other countries to make this happen. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you very much, Amit. Appreciate that. Let me move quickly then to Joint Secretary Dinesh Jagdale over at MNRE. Sir, if you might share with us your final comments.
Absolutely, Martin. Thanks. And it was really wonderful to listen to the panelists, very noble ideas and the thought process that have come across. With all the respect to all the ladies and the women in this group, I think it's a very important subject. I take this as a stakeholder consultation for me to move on. And the white paper that will come out with from this discussion will be a really important tool for us at MNRE to move towards bringing in good changes in the way the cooking mechanisms have been worked out. I look forward to that, and may I request most of you to keep on sharing your valuable ideas with us. I'm keen to listen to you and take all your views and feedbacks and move towards a very cleaner and greener Indian economy with all the due taking care of all the SDGs that the Clean Cooking initiative will bring in. Very, very nice to be a part of this team and listen to all the very noble ideas. Thank you. Have a nice evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jagdale. We appreciate that. Then let me close up with Secretary Kumar, and then I'll say a couple parting words and wish you all a good evening. I see a lot of good questions coming in on the chat. Please keep them coming in during our final comments. We'll do everything we can to address those. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you very much, Martin, for giving me the opportunity again. And I would like to say that this webinar has been very useful personally to me. And I've been able to learn such a lot from all the esteemed panelists. And I would like to thank all of them, each and every one of them, for their contributions to this seminar important subject. And I would like to say that, that as Asna was saying, that different countries, different regions, different societies have different solutions because they are at various stages of development, because they have various resources. Because some countries may not have solar power. Some countries may be lacking on the biomass resources in the far off regions, in the hills, and so we have to find the appropriate solution for a particular society, for a particular region, and create awareness about that clean system. Second, once we have the clean cooking systems, we have to create economies of scale and make them affordable. unless a solution is affordable, it will not be picked up. So the cost of solution should be within the range of a family of a person. Third thing, we'll have to create awareness. Awareness in the society about the need for clean cooking. And I would agree at one point of time that while the taste is important, the mode of cooking is important, smoky flair is important. But beyond that, we have to say, and we all agree, that there is a need to reduce the carbon footprint, even if it is at the cost of the taste, because we owe a better world to our future generation. And whose responsibility is this? Is the responsibility of all stakeholders, individual, both men and women, private sector, the government, and every citizen of this globe. So I think if we all come together, and if we all agree to reduce the carbon footprint, if we all create awareness about the clean systems available and adopt the right solution for us, I think we would be winning the battle. So thank you very much, Martin, once again, for making me partner in this webinar. And I would like to be associated with you in all your future endeavors and contribute to whatever I can in my little way. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Secretary Kumar. And we'll look forward to working with you in the future. I know that will certainly be the case. We look forward to it. Let me close this evening by wishing all of you well, much safety and good health, much a change in behavior that can be uncomfortable, but is absolutely necessary for the welfare of our entire community around the world. We are grateful for your participation tonight. We know that it is not easy doing it in this manner. It would be much more preferable to gather in a conference room somewhere in a big hotel with a crystal for cold water and coffee and tea and share lunch with you. And we look forward to doing that again very, very soon. I can't tell you how much we miss those opportunities, but this also offers us opportunity too, like I said in the beginning, a chance to practice our resilient behaviors and also a chance to bring in people who may not be able to travel to this location and participate in person, as we had with Ms. Taufik from Canada and others around the world who were joining us. I know a lot of people have a lot of questions and curiosities. I think there was an exchange of a lot of good information this evening. And as I mentioned earlier, we will seek to address those. I'm looking at the chat here on the side. I see now there is about 174 questions, and that's a great thing. We would encourage more in the last couple minutes. If you can get them in, please, please do. If you can't, you can send them back to the organizer of the webinar via the email that you received early on. I'd like to again thank our good friends at USISPF, specifically Sid and Nolti for joining us this evening. I'd like to thank my colleague and good friend Monali, who does a spectacular job in organizing this, and although you didn't see it behind the scenes, is kicking me every couple of minutes to make sure I'm staying on course and asking the right questions. Thank you, Monali. So with that, Godspeed, best to all of you, and we'll see you on the next one of these coming up in the very near future. Look for our white paper. I think you'll find it a great follow-up to our discussion. Good night. Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Bye-bye.